Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Welcome back to another episode of the Work From Home Show. I'm Naresh with Adam as usual, and today we have one of the world's most famous, best copywriters. His name is Bob Bly, and he is the founder of CTC Publishing, #1 best-selling author of many, many books on copywriting. Let me just share a few of these titles. The Words You Should Know to Sound Smart, 1,200 Essential Words Every Sophisticated Person Should Be Able to Use. Another book of his is How to Write and Sell Simple Information for Fun and Profit, Your Guide to Writing and Publishing Books, Ebooks, Articles, Special Reports, Audio Programs, DVDs, and other how-to content. I've read that book. Another one of his best-selling books is Secrets of a Freelance Writer, How to Make $100,000 a Year or More, and his newly released 4th edition of the most popular book. I was given this handbook when I started working at one of the largest, I guess you can call them a copywriting company, at Agora Publishing. This book is called The Copywriter's Handbook, a step-by-step guide to writing copy that sells. Bob, it is truly a pleasure to have you on the Work From Home Show.
The pleasure's all mine, and it's nice to be here.
Now, Bob, I was reading through your bio, and before we get to copywriting, I saw that you're actually a trained engineer, and you worked in engineering. My father is an engineer, and I've got to ask you, how on earth did you go from engineer to marketing and sales writer?
The short version is that my first love for a long time was science. And so I went to college majoring in chemistry. I quickly realized that to be successful in chemistry, you need a PhD. And I didn't want to be in school that long. So I realized, well, what could I do in the chemical field that doesn't need a PhD? And as an engineer, a chemical engineer, you don't. A bachelor is fine. So I went to the University of Rochester and got a BS in chemical engineering. But when you graduate from engineering school, a lot of companies come on campus and interview you. And some offered me engineering jobs, but a couple of them, the recruiters said, well, we're looking for technical writers or marketing writers. And with your technical background, you'd be very desirable to the hiring manager. And that's what I did. I had my first job was at Westinghouse in the late 70s, and I was a marketing writer.
What skill set do you think fits best with the profession of copywriting?
Someone asked me this today on Quora. I answer a lot of questions on Quora, and my answer might surprise her and surprise you. I think the #1 skill you need is clear thinking, the ability to think clearly. Because if you don't think clearly, your writing won't be clear.
Well, how is that a skill you can build up? Are there specific exercises you recommend for thinking clearly?
I tell people there are 3 fundamental ways to learn to write. And they sound overly simplistic, but I believe this. #1 is to write. I write every day of the year. And I don't know if you've read Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point, but in it, do you remember he says, if you do anything for 1,000 hours, you're going to get good at it.
Yep.
So, that's what you do. You write, and the more often you write and the more regularly, you're going to hit 1,000 hours. So writing is the best way to learn writing.
And I think that book, sorry to interrupt, it was Outliers that had the...
Outliers?
Yeah.
I read that too, so I'm sure you're right. And the next way is reading, because to be a reader, you need 2 types of knowledge. Specific knowledge for the project you're working on, and general knowledge in a broad range of subjects that you can draw on to add facts and verisimilitude to your writing. And the third way to learn it is today, more so than when I started, although I did it too in the early 80s, is to take writing training. There's a lot of copywriting training available online today. There are books, there are courses, there are closed Facebook groups. There are masterminds, and you definitely should take advantage of the training to shortcut your learning. So those are the three ways. Study copywriting, write all the time, and read all the time.
Now, there are a whole lot of books out there on copywriting, and a whole lot of people who, say they have courses on copywriting. How, if you're getting into this and you want to educate yourself, how do you tell the difference between something that could actually help you along with this career and something that's just going to be a waste of money?
The quick answer to this, and there's several ways to tell. First thing I want to know is the teacher, the course instructor, producer, an active working copywriter now? Some of them never were copywriters. And so for them to teach you is ridiculous. Some of them were copywriters, some of them not greatly successful. Others, they were good copywriters and successful. But they said, well, I'm not going to write copy anymore. I'm just going to teach it. You should be an active practitioner of what you're teaching. Otherwise, you don't know what the trends are, what's working today, and what is happening in the field. So I look first and foremost for a course where the instructor isn't based primarily a course giver or seller. The instructor is primarily a copywriter who also does a course or gives courses.
And I should say to all our listeners, Bob's being a little bit humble here because he's not plugging his own stuff. But when I got started copywriting, it's not my profession, but copy is so important to online and digital marketing. It was his books that introduced his courses. Bob, you're probably familiar with Agora Publishing and the copywriters there, and Mike Palmer, who I trained under there very briefly. It was really Bob Bly's works that helped me to understand copywriting and become not just a good copywriter, but just a good writer in general. So I highly, highly recommend the books that I said earlier in this episode. Go on Amazon, look up his name. Highly recommend his works. Check out his websites. But Bob, let's backtrack a little bit, because our listeners, the bulk of them are actually people who have corporate jobs or they had corporate jobs, and they're looking to earn an income working from home, and now they're kind of forced to earn an income at home. So what is copywriting exactly?
Well, copywriting is writing that is meant to sell a product or a service. Normally, we used to say advertising, but now in today's multi-channel marketing world, you're writing any form of marketing, online or offline, where the objective is to sell. And you can be a copywriter at a corporation, you can be a copywriter at a digital agency or an ad agency, or you can be freelance. It doesn't really matter which of those venues you work in, but a copywriter is someone who writes to sell, not just to inform, not to entertain, but to generate either leads or conversions.
Yeah, and I call it advertising text. So it's text that is
good definition.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of people, they think, copywriting can obviously be done from home, but a lot of times the job seems easier than it actually is. Can you kind of talk to us about how, if you go out and find a client, if I were to go out and find a client today that wanted copywriting and I knew how to do it, how long does it usually take a person to write copy, or how long have you kind of figured with all the people that you've encountered, how much of a process is it?
Well, I have the process I use for copywriting on my website. If anybody wants to take a look at it, you can go. You mind if I give the URL?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
It's www.bly, my last name, B as in boy, ly.com. And when you get to the homepage, click on methodology, and you'll see a button for my copywriting process. But in terms of how long it takes, you're not going to know that when you start. You're not going to be able to say for your first ad, I guess this is going to take me a day. I guess this is going to take me a week, an hour. But you're going to have the same kind of assignments repeatedly. After you've written 3 or 4, let's say, magazine ads, you pretty much know how long it's going to take. After you've written 2 or 3 landing pages, then you get a better sense of what's involved and how long it takes. So you really only know your time frame by doing it, through the experience of doing it.
Yeah, and I should say copy comes in many different forms. So when I got started in my online marketing career, Twitter was kind of a new social media. And in Twitter, look, that's copy, writing tweets. President Trump, I doubt a copywriter proofreads what he says, but that's 140 characters worth of copy, really, at the end of the day. So you can write copy that's as short as 140 characters on Twitter, or driving down a freeway, which not a lot of people are doing right now, but driving down a freeway, you see a billboard, that's copy that's up on the billboard. And it can take some people, minutes to come up with that copy. In other cases, a long form sales package, I know people who spent 3 years working on those like long advertising text, they're almost like ebooks. It took them 3 years to write those. So it really depends, Bob, on what kind of channel you're advertising on, or what kind of platform the copy is going to go on, correct?
Yes, and I agree with what you just said. In some cases, often digital, you really don't know the word length, because you're on the computer, you have as much space as you need. Versus, let's say, and I do this a lot, I have clients who want half-page newspaper ads, typically selling financial products or more commonly dietary supplements. And we know from experience that an ad with solid text, not like a consumer ad for a shampoo or whatever, but an informational ad with solid text that's a half page, going to have between 900 and 1,000 words. So in a sense, it's a little easier because you know how to spread what word length to shoot for. You know when you're going to have to stop. So that's an advantage of print. When you're doing a landing page for a nutritional supplement, you can go on forever. And in some cases you should. I've had winning landing pages that are 30 to 45 minutes.
And I should quickly add, my books, which are available on Amazon, I get them consulted from copywriters who I highly respect. So, for example, one of my best-selling, actually almost all my books have been consulted with professional copywriters, but 50 Shades of Marketing, Whip Your Business into Shape and Dominate Your Competition. That's probably my most famous title that I've come out with. Sold more than 10,000 copies of that book. And it took me, I said maybe 10 words, and it took me about 6 months to come up exactly with those 10 words for the title of that book. So,
well, that is a great title. I wouldn't have thought of that, and I love it.
Thank you.
So how do you know if what you're writing, before, if you're just getting started, how do you know when you've written good copy and when you can approach companies to kind of prove that you know what you're doing?
Well, of course, overall, if your copy runs with, let's say, B-level clients who are not that demanding, you'll learn at their expense, and some of it'll work and some of it won't, and you'll gradually learn what works. But there are specific formulas and techniques for being able to evaluate your copywriting. For example, there's one specifically that works very well with email subject lines, landing page headlines. We call it the 4 U's. And if you want, I could quickly go over it.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the 4 U's. A winning subject line or headline has 4 characteristics. Number 1, it's unique. It's not the same old thing. You haven't heard it before. Number 2, it's useful. there is a benefit to it in it for the reader or the customer. The next one is it's ultra specific. Specific sell. Probably a lot of your listeners and you guys have read Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins, and his famous quote from there is specific sell. And then the last one that most people, this is the one that is most commonly omitted because people don't know it, urgency, urgent. There is a clear reason to act now instead of later, because we know that a decision deferred is usually a decision not made.
So which one of those is the one, you said urgency is the one that people kind of skip over. Which one is the one that people tend to focus on?
Well, urgency is the one that they're not aware of or they don't think of. That's usually the weakest. The one that they're most focused on is useful, because that translates into benefits. And most people who have some knowledge of copywriting know that copy has to present benefits. So that's the one that they usually do well.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the ultra specific you?
Yeah. I don't know if you guys ever got, because you're young, direct mail from Boardroom selling their various newsletters and books. They had a direct mail package, and I forget what the book was. And on the outer envelope, it said, "What never to eat on an airplane." That is ultra specific. And you're saying something that has not been said before.
Okay. Got it. And I think these 4 U's, it's not just copywriting, but for our entrepreneurs or people who want to become business owners out there, I think these can be applied to business ideas. If you have an idea for a company or a product, urgent, unique, ultra specific, useful. If it satisfies those 4 U's, it's probably a good business idea.
It probably is. The more commonly used formula for evaluating businesses, as you know, because you've heard it many times, is the USP, the unique selling proposition, which has 3 parts, again, which I could go into if you want.
Sure.
Part number 1 is that it is same as the 4 U's. There's a lot of similarities between it and the 4 U's. Number 1, it's useful. It says something positive about the product, how you will benefit by having the product. Number 2, it's unique. It makes a clear difference between your product and others in that category. And 3, it's important. The difference that you pick can't be something so minor that no one cares about it. It has to make a difference or matter to the potential buyer. And that's the one where people fall down. They say, well, my widget's blue instead of pink. Well, that's a difference, but who cares?
Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned finding the one point that's specific there that makes a big difference, but you've also talked about in your books about how to market something that isn't, like it's just a different brand who's come into the market. How do you go about if you have a client who you don't think they have anything particularly special, how do you break into a market like that?
I'll give an example. I don't know if you remember this from Scientific Advertising, but Claude Hopkins, the famous copywriter who wrote that book, was put on by his ad agency the Schlitz beer account. Again, you guys are too young to remember Schlitz beer.
My parents drank it. Loved it.
Yeah, I drank it. I didn't love it. It's not, there are many other better brands, but it was popular, like Budweiser. And he was assigned to write a campaign. And, he tasted it. And Schlitz, if you tasted it, was like most, lighter beers, yellow beers. Nothing really special about it. And he's walking through the brewery, and he notices that the bottles that Schlitz is bottled in are on a machine, and live steam, hot steam, is being shot into the bottles. And he asked the brewmaster, why do you do that? He says, well, we want it to be, completely free of particles and microbes. So the beer that you get is the purest beer. And he said, well, we could use that in our ads. And the brewmaster said, no, 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 no. Everyone does that. And then Hopkins said, but I've never heard of it. And the beer drinking market doesn't know it. So if you don't have something unique, you can use as your key lead feature or USP, something that your competitors may have, but no one's talking about.
Awesome. So as far as the profession goes, what is the current demand for copywriting? Are there a lot of jobs available?
Yeah, there are a lot of jobs available. And part of that is due to the internet. In the old days, we would write a sales letter and that was it. But now you write an online sales letter. You also need a squeeze page before that. You need to have email autoresponder series when someone goes on the page and doesn't buy, to convert them. You'll need various methods of driving traffic to it, such as banner ads or pay-per-click ads or Facebook ads. So there's more elements to the typical multi-channel marketing campaign than there are to the old-fashioned print campaign. That creates more copy that needs to be written.
How do you make sure that you're not, if you're a new person coming into this, how do you make sure you're not massively undervaluing the amount of time that you're going to spend and, price yourself too low for the market?
Well, in terms of pricing, whatever you start at, if you can get hired at that, get hired at that. When you reach the point, and it could be very quickly, where you have more people who want to hire you and do hire you at that rate, now you know it's time to raise your rate. That's how you move up on the pay scale.
Yeah, and that's really the case for any freelancer, whether you're a copywriter, a designer, a IT person. That's just a good thumb to follow. It's once you become so busy that you can't take on more clients, well, that tells you that you should probably start raising your rates.
Yeah, I mean, it's a supply and demand thing. If there is more demand for your service, then you have supply, and your supply is limited by your staff, or if you're a freelancer, by your hours, then, the odds tip in your favor.
Well, we talked a little bit about the pricing and the demand, but how does a copywriter, how do they build their clientele, or how do they get a full-time job as a copywriter?
Well, a full-time job is not that different than getting any other job in the corporate world. You go through Indeed is a big source. For example, I'm not looking for a job, but I registered on Indeed, and I get every week a nice choice listing of job opportunities. So that's a big way today that people are getting jobs. They're going through Indeed, Career Builders, Upwork. So, online is a very big way to get a job today. And I still wouldn't neglect, writing individual letters to people. It's easy enough to find out who's the marketing director at Company X. It's probably on their website. So you can send them an email or write them a letter. And most today we do emails, and that's a way to work. And you can get an interview that could lead to a job. For freelancing, there's many different ways to promote yourself as a freelance. One of my favorites is content marketing. If you establish yourself as an expert copywriter or an expert in your copywriting niche or market by writing content, you have a blog, you write articles, you have an e-newsletter, people are going to read that and begin to think or begin to view you as someone who's better than the run of the mill. I'm sorry about that. And that's a very good way to get, not only to build your reputation, so when someone comes to you, they're inclined to hire you, but also it's a good way to get leads. I mean, I have this all the time. I'll be sitting here, the phone will ring, as you just heard. I'll pick it up and someone will say, hey, I've been reading your newsletter for 6 months and they didn't do anything. They just read it. They never contacted me and we have a job and we'd like to hire you. So that's one way you get clients. And there are many others.
So when you're talking about earlier about all the copy you have to write these days with the internet, squeeze pages and everything, is that something that you need to know personally how many steps there are, or is that something your client is going to bring to you and say, we have this internet marketing campaign, we need this page, this page, this page, this page done, or are they going to expect you to know all of the pages that need to be written going in?
They will expect you to know all of the elements that go into a campaign, but they will probably ask you to only write certain ones. So often the client will tell me, we need the squeeze page, the sales page, the pop under, when someone tries to leave without buying, the pop under that says, don't wait yet, claim your free gift. And then we need the autoresponder emails that once someone gives us their name and email address, that we send out through an autoresponder software. And those are the key elements. And not every job I get asked to do that. Sometimes all they want from me is the landing page or the sales letter, and I'm happy to do that. But they expect that you know how internet marketing basically works for selling a product, a course, a service, a mastermind group. They have some idea of the strategy.
And going back to kind of how to get a job or how to get more clients, I brought up earlier, I started my career at Stansberry Research, which is a franchise of Agora Publishing, and they hire copywriters like crazy. I mean, they hire hundreds of copywriters every year, and some of these bigger companies like Agora Financial, Agora Publishing, Stansberry Research, The Motley Fool is a competitor. They have their own internal copywriting training programs. So back when I was there, it was very informal, but now it's formal in that you're actually put through like a 3-month, 4-month crash course training program. And then after you graduate from that program, you're a full-time employee or freelancer for the company. So highly recommend folks to look up those companies or just reach out to us, hello@workfromhomeshow.com. And I can get you in touch with some of those places or the publishers or the copy directors at some of those places. Any other resources you recommend, Bob?
Well, just to mention, those are certainly at the top of my list. Both of them all of them are clients, and I've written for them, and these companies are companies to whom copy is vital and important. But there are plenty of other companies. There are big corporations in your state or in your county. One of my clients was, a 45-minute drive away. It was called BOC Gases. They made industrial gas. And they're, even locally, the famous Clayton Makepeace, who arguably was the one or two of the greatest, in the top 2 or 3 of the greatest copywriters, of the last 10, 20, 30 years. He passed away recently. He said that his first client was a local place that made cupcakes. So, there's many places to start.
So if someone's going into this and, really cracks down and works at it, what kind of salary do you think is a reasonable thing for people to, consider whenever going into this?
It'll be different for everyone, but I'd say this. Today, a good copywriter, and let's talk about freelance, because I'm less familiar today with corporate salaries. For a freelancer, if you're making $100,000 to $150,000, you're doing well, at least to start. If you're more experienced, you can make $200,000, $300,000 or more. The top copywriters make $500,000 a year and up. And there are a handful that make 7 figures. But most of the higher paid copywriters have multiple streams of income. So it's not just, it's not just that they're writing copy, although that's the main thing they do. They're giving talks. Like, for example, I was asked a few months ago to give a copywriting training session at a major credit card company. I spent the day there, and they paid me $6,500. So part of my income comes from speaking. A smaller part of my income, well, some of my income comes from selling information products on the internet. I also have income from writing traditional books for mainstream publishers that, pay me in advance and a royalty. So there are, and some copywriters, I don't do this, make money, significant money, coaching and mentoring other copywriters as well as small business owners. So most of the people who are at the 500,000 plus level have multiple streams of income.
Yeah, can you talk about the kind of residuals that you can get as a copywriter and when you recommend kind of asking for those as a copywriter?
Well, residuals are not as widespread as the training industry leads you to believe. There are only a small amount of companies that pay, we call them in my day royalties, that pay royalties, or as you say, residuals. And these are the bigger companies like The Motley Fool, like Agora Publishing, some of the bigger supplement companies. And you can only do this with companies that are big enough that they have a system for tracking the sales your copy generates and the commission you should be paid. If you do it for a smaller company, it's more iffy. And smaller companies, or even big corporations that are not direct marketing companies, but let's say they're an industrial company like BOC Gases. Those companies tend not to pay. It's a flat fee. They don't pay royalties.
Well, talking about royalties, again, having come from those, I guess, the larger corporate worlds of Agora, Motley Fool, and all those, I'll tell you, the copywriters there, their negotiating metric is only based on royalty. The job or the freelance gig that they take is only based on royalty. Now, they might get a retainer for their work, but they're deciding when they're hopping from company to company, it's all about that royalty. Royalties are such a big deal. And the copywriters, the successful copywriters who service that industry, I mean, these guys are making well north of $500,000. And they're working 2-3 hours a day max, maybe, because it's at the end of the day, if you can write good copy, then if it takes you 1 minute to do it or 1 hour or 1 month to do it, all that matters is a copy good. So royalties are a huge, huge incentive for, at least in that kind of bigger corporate industry, huge incentive.
Well, what I would counter with is that when you talk about the Agoras and the Motley Fools of the world, you're talking about outliers. They are 1/10% of all the companies out there that use copywriters. So they are the exception, not the rule. It's true. I've written for a number of them, and sometimes I do a royalty. I've written a direct mail package for a medium-sized training company that teaches options trading, and my royalty, until the guy sold the company, I made on that package $75,000 or $80,000. But that is not usual. Again, they're outliers, and I wouldn't get too excited about that. And when you say they make upwards of $500,000 and they only work 2 or 3 hours a day, a lot of people like to exaggerate how little they work and how much they make. And I tell people, I'm not disputing you, but I tell people the only numbers that you can trust are your own.
Yeah, but I know a lot of times, and I guess this is a copy strategy. If a copywriter comes out with something that works, so let's say they come out with a banner ad text that works or a long sales package that works, then every year they just kind of update it to the present day, and they just kind of run off of that. They make a career off of that one success, and they just update it and apply it with different clients, different companies, which is, I think, a pretty good strategy if it's working. and they continue to be paid royalties for all their successes.
My view and my experience is different because, yes, if you have the word for a package, let's say a sales letter that is the best sales letter for that product and that they're using regularly is the control. But controls don't last that long in most cases. One of my old teachers wrote a direct mail package for Good Housekeeping magazine that was a control for 23 years, 13 years. That's very unusual. Controls fall by the wayside because while your control is running, the company's hiring other superstar copywriters from their staff and their freelance stable to try to beat you. And these guys are desperately trying to beat you. And often they do. And as soon as they beat you, your package shuts off. And, if it's working and nobody's beating you, then yes, you're smart to if you're getting a royalty, to make tweets and keep your eye on it. Not to make tweaks, not tweets, to keep your eye on it. But that, again, the lifespan of most controls is fairly short. And you can't really say, well, I wrote this package for Porter Stansberry. I'll basically knock it off for the money map. And the reason you can't is the products are often dissimilar, and an idea that works for one doesn't work for the other. In the olden days, I would say, especially in the newspaper days, if you wrote an ad for a chiropractor who was local and it worked, you could sell that to chiropractors in other states. But I'm not sure I agree. Or my experience is different than yours. Let's put it that way.
So, looking at your website, you have an offer. Like, if people join your email list, they get, I believe it's 4 of your books. How do you decide how much you should give away whenever you're trying to entice somebody to join a list?
This is, for me, was easy. I sell on my website. I have a button that says special reports, and I sell probably a dozen special reports that people actually order on my website and buy through my shopping cart that sell for $29 each. So I said, what should I give away to get people to opt into my list? And I just did the math and I said, well, 4 times 29 is $116. So once I was able to say, you get pack of 4 special reports worth over $100. That's a price point that denotes high value. And that page, I haven't measured it lately, but for a long time, the conversion rate on that page was 49%.
So you also decided that each lead was worth $116 then? No,
because these are PDFs. They don't cost me anything to give away.
Right, but I'm just, you technically the value would have been $116 if they bought the book. So potential.
I don't see it that way.
Okay.
The leads, different people have different numbers, but a common one is if you have a large list, throughout the list, the average is your revenue will be from each name a dime to $1 per month. Now, it can often be more, but what that means is it doesn't mean that each customer is giving you $1 a month. It means you have a list of 100,000 people, but only 8,000 are regular buyers. But it averages out to what I said, a dime to $1, maybe $2 per month per name.
Bob, you said that you do you have a lot of training, courses available, books available. Can you give us a glimpse of kind of the different lifestyle of, or the different lifestyles of being a copywriter? Maybe you have a student or a former student. What is a typical copywriter's lifestyle? Where can they live? Where do they live? What's their day-to-day?
Well, AWAI, the American Writers and Artists Incorporated, they attract people to the field by advertising. You could live anywhere. You could write on the beach. They encourage people to live in Costa Rica. they have a magazine called The Barefoot Writer, meaning you don't wear shoes because you're on the beach. And I find that for some of my people who have used my materials and become copywriters say to me, well, the best part is the freedom. Like one guy I know, he wanted to move to New Hampshire and he was able to, but I don't. And some of them, like another guy said he has a big RV and, he doesn't stay put. He travels all over the world. And because of all over the US rather, and because of the Wi-Fi, he loves the roaming lifestyle and he can write from anywhere. I don't do that. I live a very ordinary lifestyle. I live in a suburb of New Jersey. I come in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. I turn on the computer. I write till 6 p.m. and then I leave. So, my day is very work a day. I'm not looking to be on a beach, but, everybody's different.
And going back to one of your comments about having multiple streams of income as a copywriter, I have, I guess, a former colleague, kind of a friend. He was a copywriter, very successful copywriter at Stansberry, did extremely well. But the skills that he learned as a copywriter helped him develop his own product based on his personal background and experiences with the military. And so he ended up writing copy to launch one of his own products, which is on survival training and just survivalism in general. And now he went on Shark Tank, raised a bunch of funding from the entrepreneur, the investors there on Shark Tank, and now he has a regular spot at the top of the world in Vegas and does, I think, 5 days a week, does, presentations on his survivalist skills and all that. He's written books. And it's all this happened. Now he's not a copywriter anymore. He quit the job and he's taken over his business full time because it's doing extremely well. But this is a great example of how copywriting kind of spurred that innovation, spurred that creativity, so that this copywriter could ended up becoming a very successful entrepreneur.
There are many examples of that. Bill Bonner at Agora, Joe Sugarman at Blue Blocker Sunglasses, Ted Nicholas, who passed away recently. He had a bunch of different businesses. There are a lot of people who start as copywriters and say, well, why don't I do this for myself, and become very successful at it? Because if you're a good businessman and you're a good copywriter, it's sort of a unbeatable. I was going to say deadly, but it's deadly to your competition, but it's an unbeatable combination. And those people, though, are not common. It's not uncommon, but not everyone can do that. There are a lot of people who are successful entrepreneurs that don't write copy and outsource it. And there are a lot of copywriters who are successful copywriters and say, I don't want to have a business. I don't want to sell products. I just want to write copy.
Yeah. Well, Bob Bly, he is the world's best and most famous copywriter. At least that's what I think. Founder of CTC Publishing. He's going to be back on the next episode. It's going to be a shorter episode. But in the meantime, check out his books. There are too many to name. Just go on Amazon, type in Bob Bly or Robert Bly. You'll see the books there. His website, bly.com, ctcpublishing.net. Bob Bly, thanks a lot for coming on. We're looking forward to the next episode.
It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you.